Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm your host here, Bart, and I would like to welcome you to Technology in Renewable series, where are we discussing the newest and hottest topics in the world of e-mobility, smart EV charging, energy management, and also renewable energy, and obviously technology and business around it. In today's episode, our guest is Christian Hahn, CEO of Hubject. Hey, Christian, good to have you here in our virtual studio. How are you doing?
Thank you, Bart. Yeah, and thank you for the invitation. Pleasure joining you today. And yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you. Sun is shining, so that's good for renewables, right? So we're producing right now a lot of green energy, which of course is becoming more important every day as we unfortunately see it due to the, let's say challenges on global level. But yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you. And again, thank you for having me in your show.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, our pleasure. Christian, my first question to you, um, BMW, Bosch, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, NLX, Innogy, Siemens, Volkswagen Group, what they do have in common? You know those brands pretty well, so it'll be exciting to hear from you.
Yeah, but yeah, you're totally right. I know them very well because they are all shareholders of Hubject. And what do they have in common is not only their strong interest in creating sustainable solutions for e-mobility charging, but also, trying to establish a common ground in the European, on the international market in regards of EV charging, because we all know that EV charging will become a very important part of our future life. And therefore, we all together need to find a solution how we can make sure that charging is becoming also a seamless service. It's becoming a very simple service, because that's one of the main requirements from our point of view subject, but also from the view of our shareholders, that charging will be more and more adopted and electric vehicles will be more adopted by people all around the world.
So what was the purpose of actually them coming together and creating Hubject? Can you elaborate a little bit more? How did your adventure start with Hubject and also with EV? I assume Hubject will be turning 10 years today. It's quite some time. So can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, exactly, but you're totally right. Hubject is already 10 years old, so soon we are becoming a teen as well. So let's see if you also do the typical challenges of becoming a teenager. Let's see. But the original idea behind having Hubject in the market is that interoperability, that's how we call the access of charging infrastructure from a B2B perspective, is best done maybe by a kind of neutral player in between all other companies in the market. And therefore, our shareholders have decided to set up a so-called corporate joint venture named Hubject, and make Hubject responsible for offering a roaming service, which is connecting all relevant charging networks all over Germany, but also all over Europe, because of course mobility is not stopping at a border. And that's exactly what we have started to do 10 years ago. And I would say right now we are doing it quite well. We have established the largest roaming network already. And of course, we are right now very positive about the adoption and the development of EV charging, because what we are seeing as well is that electric vehicles are becoming one of the top topics in the global industry. Of course, we all know we are still in the early phase. So yes, we all are facing challenges every day on using electric vehicles. And of course, we all know that topics like ranges, customer experience, they are maybe not yet the best ones. But on the other hand, we at least have solved the question, how can I use all the charging stations around me? And that's best done by a concept called roaming, which we have established and which is now adopted by most European charging network operators already.
Exactly. So you mentioned about the interoperability and EV roaming. So from the standpoint of the regular driver that actually is about to buy an electric vehicle, how important is EV roaming for the whole industry as a, I assume, enabler to make it way easier for those drivers to charge those cars? Why it is like very much important for drivers, and why does everyone want to or should actually implement e-roaming services?
Yeah, again, very good question. maybe I'm trying to answer your question first from an EV driver perspective, but then I would also like to add a B2B perspective. From an EV driver perspective, I think it's totally understood that charging needs to be as easy as possible, because that's the only way how more people will adopt electric vehicles. And we all know that charging is in some topics slightly more complex, because we all are used to use petrol stations since years. That's what we are doing since ages. And using electric vehicles works slightly differently than using petrol stations. And that's something we need to get used to. And therefore, I think it's very important for us as an industry to make sure that charging is even becoming easier than using petrol stations. And I think we are right now in a good way. But to achieve this, we need to make sure that from an EV travel perspective, I know all the times when I'm going around with my electric vehicle, where's the next charging station? How can I use the charging station? Is the charging station available for me? What does it cost to use a charging station? Do I maybe get a better price if I'm charging a bit less or if I'm charging later, and things like that? And that's what we also call the EV charging customer experience, that this needs to be a connected approach, and that in the end, as an EV driver, I don't even need to care about all these things. I'm just able to use it, to consume it, as simple, as seamless as possible. And therefore, I believe that this is super important from an EV driver perspective. But as Hubject is a pure B2B company, of course, we are focusing on the interests of the companies who are enabling this customer experience. And therefore, we believe that from a B2B perspective, it's even more important to rely on roaming. Why? Because the market is becoming more complex every day, which I think is a great signal that the EV charging industry is now becoming a more mature market when more companies are joining the industry. But on the other hand, it makes things more complex. And Bart, we discussed already the very high number of companies in place in the German market, for example. So in Germany, we have a official database where you need to register if you want to operate charging stations. And this database is now listing more than 1,000 companies. And of course, a lot of them are not operating more than 1 or 2 charging points. So they are maybe not that relevant. But still, if you would assume that maybe only 1/3 of them is relevant, we still have more than 300 companies who are operating charging networks of a relevant size. And if you would now imagine to close contracts and exchange data with 300 companies only for the German market, you see that this is a super complex topic. And that's exactly where we see the value, the benefit of roaming, because we already are connected to most of them. So you don't need to set up relationships with 300. You just need to set up a relationship with Hubject, and then we take care of the rest. And that's something we're not only doing for the German market, but for the European market, and even more for additional markets like China and North America and a lot of Southeast Asian markets. So therefore, this roaming concept is exactly helping to solve complexity, which is then hopefully also ensuring that there's a better customer experience for EV drivers.
Well, you mentioned database in Germany, but you also mentioned US, China, and I know that you recently came back from Vietnam from your business trip as well. So the Hubject solution is a global solution, right? What kind of markets do you guys cover? If you can explain a little bit more.
Happy to do so. And before I'm giving the specific examples, I would like maybe to address a bit on the question: why is Hubject active on a global level? Isn't charging something which is working differently from market to market? And frankly speaking, what I've seen right now in my 12, 13 years, I'm now able to work in the EV charging industry, is that from an end customer perspective, the needs, the desires are similar, because every EV driver in China, in France, in the US wants to have the same good customer experience. He wants to get access to the same information, to the same customer journey. And of course, we know that in some countries, there's a different number of charging players, in some countries much less, in some countries even more. But what we are seeing is, as soon as the industry becomes more relevant in a specific market, the number of players goes up. That's exactly what we have seen in China already, where of course we have in the beginning 5, 6 large players. Now we have several hundreds of companies in place all over China who are operating charging infrastructure. We just talked about the example in Germany, but that's the same situation in other markets like France. In UK, there's every day a new CPO, new charging network operator popping up. And we also see right now in the US market a strong increase in numbers of companies because of the huge investment done by the government. And therefore, we have seen, even if markets maybe start slightly differently, in the end, they will all evolve. And when they are evolving, they become more complex. And therefore, we believe that it's important to have someone in place like Hubject who's trying to reduce complexity, which is, by the way, exactly how other industries are working. So when we have a look into the finance industry, when we have a look into the mobile phone industry, then we see that there are similar companies in place who are trying to reduce complexity based on a platform-based approach. And we are doing nothing else than this, but only for EV charging. And therefore, to answer your question, finally, we are active in the European market. That's for sure our core market. But since 2017, we are active in the North American market as well, US and Canada. Since 2018, we have another subsidiary located in China, and we are in Japan, in Southeast Asia, as mentioned, Australia. Right now, we are in quite intense discussions about Singapore and Thailand and additional markets. And of course, we already are looking into the next markets like Middle East. Super interesting what is happening there in regards of charging activities. And from our point of view, and therefore, personally, I'm a strong believer in electric vehicles, not only because it's a much better way to go around because you're producing less or even no emissions, but it also helps specific countries to overcome, let's say, the mistakes we did in Europe or in the US, where we have used for a too long time vehicles which are creating a lot of pollution. And we see in countries like India or Philippines or Indonesia, who are now having a strong interest in setting up a local EV charging and EV OEM industry, that this could be helpful to, just have a step over the bad experiences we have done in Europe with a lot of pollutions based on mobility. And they are just focusing on battery electric mobility. And in best case, even by creating their own industry on this and producing their own vehicles. That's something I find super interesting, which we see is happening more and more often on a global level.
Thank you, Christian. So as you've got global presence, you mentioned that your business model is B2B. In other words, I understand that you're providing your technology platform to companies that are basically charge point operators that operate charging stations. How does the technology work? If you can very much briefly explain. I have I buy the charge stations. I select a CPO that will operate this. How can I become how can I join the global network of Hubject?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So what we are offering are two main services, so to say. The first service is a IT service. So whenever you are starting your own charging network or you want to offer your own charging service, then we rely on a backend you're using, an IT system, which is managing your charging stations, managing your end customers. And we would connect then our IT system with your IT system based on a reliable IT connection. But more importantly, we are offering a business framework. And this business framework is including all relevant details you need to have in place if you want to do business with the companies who already are using our solution. So therefore, whenever you're joining the Hubject network, so to say, or we call it more specifically the Intercharge network, then you are closing a contract with all existing, but also all new joining companies. And that, of course, is exactly achieving this effect I've mentioned before, that this is reducing complexity, because what you don't need to do in addition is to reach out to hundreds and thousands of companies active in the mobility industry and set up business contracts. That's already done based on this business framework Hubject is delivering. You can still do it for sure if you have specific conditions or if you want to agree on specific kind of collaboration models. Please do so. We won't stop you, but you don't need to. And we believe that this is super important, especially as mentioned. There are so many companies out there, and therefore managing these hundreds and thousands of business relationships is super, super complex. And instead, we are offering it all by one business agreement. And that, of course, helps you also as a company in the charging market to focus on your core topics, like operating efficiently a charging infrastructure or providing great customer services.
Christian, on our previous episode, we've actually had a pleasure having Oleg from my CEO of IoTecha, and he and I talked about a recently launched plug and charge solution. I saw that you, together with IoTecha, Hubject has created one of the first implementations in the US. You did a press release. Can you tell us a little bit, what is plug and charge and why it is actually so attractive? And also very much interesting would be the level of adoption of plug and charge here in Europe versus the US, for example.
Yeah, super good questions. So maybe let's start first with a very short explanation what plug and charge is. And as already mentioned, customer experience is key, and especially a seamless customer experience. And we all know that right now it's still a kind of hurdle, at least, if you need to swipe your RFID card or your smartphone application if you want to use a charging station. Therefore, we believe the much better way is, like for example Tesla is doing, that you're just plugging in and then the rest is done automatically between the electric vehicle and the charging station. So therefore, we want to establish the Tesla effect, but with non-Tesla vehicles and non-Tesla charging stations. And that's what we are calling plug and charge. So as a customer, you're just plugging in and the rest is done automatically between, as mentioned, charging station and electric vehicle. Why is that important? Because what is then happening in the background is also that there's a secure communication channel being set up between the electric vehicle and the charging station. Why do we need this, you may ask? Simple reason. We are now becoming a more mature market. We already mentioned this today. And more maturity also means that we need more reliability, that we need more scalability, and most importantly, more security. So therefore, we also need to focus more in the whole industry on making communication channels more secure. And therefore, plug and charge is a very relevant use case, because plug and charge is based on a international open and neutral standard called ISO 15118. Sounds super technical, I know, but in the end, it enables exactly this, that we have a secure communication channel, which is also creating a much better customer experience, because it's much easier to use than charging stations. What is the adoption rate right now in the market? Very good question again. So we see that a lot of car manufacturers are now finally announcing that they are implementing plug and charge. It took, frankly speaking, the industry some years to make these announcements, which is maybe also easy to understand, because in the past we have focused more on topics like producing the first electric vehicles and make them working properly, and the same for charging stations. We have very much focused on installing charging stations and making them work. So therefore, these additional features, which also are raising complexity slightly, of course, we're not in the core focus. But now the fundament has been set up, so to say, and now we can focus on the next level of charging. And one of the topics in regards of next level of charging is plug and charge, as mentioned. So therefore,
So I understand that right now, if I have an electric car in Europe and I want to take a drive from Krakow, where I am, to Berlin, where you are currently, I may expect to use e-roaming services provided by Hubject and have pretty much a seamless experience when using Hubject intercharge network and be able to use e-roaming services to charge my car. However, the adoption of plug and charge, it's still let's say processing. and it has to be a little bit more time, because I understand that what we see in the market right now is basically market is maturing enough that we will have those implementations of plug and charge solution rolling out very much effectively and efficiently within different charge networks and obviously providers of charge points. That's my understanding, right?
Exactly. Roaming is working all over Europe, exactly. So you don't need to stop in Berlin. You can even drive forward to, I don't know, Copenhagen or Paris or Barcelona. That's all reachable via roaming. Plug and charge, yes, it takes a bit more time, unfortunately, because we need to do some changes on the hardware of charging infrastructure as well as on the hardware of electric vehicles. As mentioned, most electric vehicles which are being sold in the coming years will have plug and charge on board. Now we need to make sure that the infrastructure side is following up. On the other hand, we see right now that especially a lot of fast charging network operators and high power charging network operators, so the ones who are really producing and operating charging stations with a very high power level, that they already have plug and charge in place. So from our point of view, yes, it's a matter of time, but it won't take that long anymore because it's now going to happen. On the other hand, you also asked for the situation in the US. Frankly speaking, the US market looks, at least in regards of plug and charge, a bit more positive.
All right.
Because they are one of the largest networks already has rolled out plug and charge all over the network, called Electrify America. And we also see that a lot of vehicles from US-based manufacturers like Ford, they already have plug and charge on board. Also, other US-based car manufacturers like Rivian, like Lucid, they have announced that plug and charge is part of their actual products. And therefore, I would say the adoption rate is slightly higher in the US market. But on the other hand, I think that's also natural that some topics are implemented a bit earlier in one market, but that is being adopted in other markets as well.
One thing is for sure, like exciting times ahead of us, especially when it comes to constantly evolving technology that actually impacts positively the driver experience and how we're going to be using electric cars, electric vehicles in general. Christian, two questions closing our today's interview. One, what are the big plans of Hubject within upcoming years? We see that a lot of manufacturers are saying that they are terminating the production of fossil fuel engines. The industry is maturing. What does it mean to Hubject? And obviously, you're going to be scaling up your network, but anything else that you can share that will be very much exciting for Hubject within the upcoming years?
As mentioned in the first step, we need to celebrate now our 10th year's birthday. So that's, of course, most important, having a big birthday party. But of course, what we're seeing right now, and you summarize it perfectly, the market becomes more mature, which is great to see that it's finally going to happen. More companies and more business models and more diversity, which is, I think, is a great signal to the market. But due to this increase in diversity, we also see that there's one topic which wasn't solved yet properly, and that's the quality of charging. And therefore, we believe that as Hubject, where we already are positioned between the different actors in the market, we are, as mentioned, connecting a lot of them already. We think that it could be a natural role for a company like Hubject to focus more on the quality of charging, which is, of course, having different perspectives. First topic is, of course, the quality of data. Is the data already good enough? Do we already share enough information between each others? Do we share the right information? Is it reliable enough? That's a topic where we believe that we could support a lot by making sure that the data we are sharing is more reliable. Second topic is, of course, the quality of service. We see right now that some companies have bigger challenges taking care of the growth of the market. So still surprisingly, but we see it in our system, for example, that quite often the backend systems we are connected to, that they are sometimes are not available anymore.
All right.
Maybe by coincidence, I don't know, but most often from Friday afternoon to Monday morning, and that of course makes creates not a good customer experience if you want to use a charging station which is connected by roaming, but it's not working because the backend system of the charge point operator is not working anymore, and therefore we need to make sure that we are able to monitor these challenges and provide support on maybe calling someone saying, hey, your system is down, could you please reboot it, or things like that, or even helping to reboot these systems. Because in the end, if you want to have a more mature market, we need to make sure that, as mentioned, customers have a proper and reliable customer experience. And the last topic we are right now focusing on a bit is also how to enable a kind of cross operator data exchange in regards of rating of charging stations, for example. Because what we also see is that right now, unfortunately, still more in the western part of Europe, not yet in the eastern part of Europe. So we would love to see more charging stations installed in Poland and in other countries, and hopefully this is going to happen soon. And as soon as this is going to happen, then we believe that customers should have kind of choice which kind of charging station they want to use, because we also know that some charging stations all over Europe are maybe not installed in super attractive places, which was okay for the past because you just needed to install charging stations somewhere. But maybe in the future we want to use a specific charging station to also do your weekend shopping tour, or you want to do a short break and you want to do a short walk around a very picturesque location, things like that. We believe should be enabled by providing this information as well to customers, so that customers have a kind of choice which charging station they are using, and the choice shouldn't be based only on technical criteria, but also on personal criteria, and that's something we believe will also be one of the next steps in the industry.
Perfect. Right. Thank you, Christian. Last but not least, 10th year of anniversary for Hubject. Does it mean that in September you're going to be doing Intercharge Network Conference for the 10th time as well?
Yeah, that's a very good summary of the situation. Yes, indeed, we are doing 10th years of our conference. So what is the Intercharge Network Conference? We have set up this conference 10 years ago as a kind of meeting place between companies we are working with. But since the last 10 years, this event has been evolved into one of the main meeting places of the whole EV charging society, I would call it. So I think it's one of the most visited B2B conferences for EV charging related topics. And so we are very happy and already very excited to do it again this year. If you don't mind, I would share the dates. It's September 12th and 13th this year. And we invite everyone who's coming from the industry with a strong interest in the industry to show up there. We just started the ticket sales, so therefore everyone can join. And we are really excited to organize another festival of eMobility again, how we call it internally. So it's not a typical conference, but it really shall give everyone good insights, very mature insights in what is happening right now and in the coming years in our industry.
Christian, thank you very much. We will definitely publish the link to the conference below of this episode. Thank you very much for your presence here. That's all for today's episode. Technology and Renewables plugged into Hubject. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe. And obviously, if you are looking for more information about EV charging roaming services, visit hubject.com, and you have a lot of insights and information over there. The link's going to be below. Up until next time, Christian, thank you very much one more time. And let's change the future together when it comes to eMobility. I'm very much excited about the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart. Pleasure being here.